I'm 28, and I've done everything I could to be accepted by my mother-in-law. But somehow, every single thing I did only seemed to make her hate me more. I never quite understood why she disliked me. Maybe it was because I didn't grow up in a distinguished family. Maybe because I didn't speak with the kind of poise her daughters had. Or maybe she simply resented my existence. But I'm not someone who gives up easily, especially when it comes to the people my husband loves. Liam, my husband, is a quiet man. He doesn't share his emotions much, but I knew it hurt him every time we went to a family gathering, and I was met with nothing more than a few lukewarm glances and half-hearted smiles. I used to see him sitting in silence after those dinners, smoking on the balcony, and he'd say to me, "Stop trying. You'll never be one of them." But I couldn't let go that easily. I believed that if I did enough, tried hard enough, one day Evelyn would look at me and see a real daughter-in-law, not just an outsider disrupting her perfect family. So when Liam casually mentioned that next month would be his parents' 35th wedding anniversary, I saw it as the perfect opportunity. They hadn't had a real celebration since their wedding decades ago. I decided I'd throw them a memorable party, not to score points, but to show I truly respected this family, even if they never respected me. Liam looked at me like I was out of my mind when I started listing seaside restaurants with private dining rooms, old European-style menus, and handwritten invitation cards addressed to Harold and Evelyn's lifelong friends. "You don't have to do this," he said, gently but firmly. "They're not worth it." I smiled and shrugged. "I know, but I still want to. I did it all myself. I didn't ask anyone for help. I chose the venue Evelyn once casually mentioned was charming like an oil painting. I picked out white peonies for her favorite flower. I wrote each invitation by hand. I paid for everything on my own card. I imagined her face when she walked into the place. Surprised, touched, maybe for once she'd look at me differently. The day before the party, I stopped by to drop off a tailored dress I had chosen for her. Classic silver gray in her exact measurements. She took the box, opened it slowly, then looked at me with a stare cold enough to freeze me where I stood. "Marina," she said, her tone as casual as if she were reading the weather. "Thank you for all the preparations. But tomorrow's a very private occasion. Just family. I hope you understand." I stood there, frozen in the middle of her living room, still holding the dress box. My heart felt like it had been clenched in someone else's hand. I tried to swallow my pride and asked, "I'm not considered family?" She smiled, polite, sharp. "You're Liam's wife, but we still don't quite feel that connection with you. Don't take it personally. Some people just don't fit." Then she turned away, as if she had just ticked off a chore on her list. I walked out of that house and into the fading afternoon light, my chest hollow and my hands still clenched. Liam drove in silence beside me, not saying a word until we were almost home. "I told you," he said quietly. "They're not going to change." He was right, but so was I. I didn't sleep that night. Our little apartment was so quiet, I could hear the wall clock ticking, each second a cold reminder that I had just been shut out of what they called family. I lay curled on the sofa, hugging a pillow, staring up at the dark ceiling. In my mind was everything I had planned. The white peonies already delivered, the handwritten invitations, the gold-embossed menu cards, the thank you note I had written to their guests for being part of Evelyn and Harold's enduring love. A whole month of careful planning, money saved, late-night checklists, all dismissed by a single sentence, a single look. At around 3 a.m., I got up, brewed a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. The first thing I typed was, "Tomorrow's anniversary party has been canceled. We apologize for the short notice. I sent it to every email address I had carefully collected. Old friends of theirs, former co-workers, neighbors who still played bridge with Evelyn. I canceled the decor service, the photographer. The restaurant couldn't refund everything on such short notice, but I didn't care. I looked at the final number on my receipt and didn't flinch. In the morning, Liam was still asleep. I left a note. I'll be at the restaurant this evening, but not for them. Then I messaged Zoe, my best friend since college. 6 p.m. tonight. Dress up. We're having our own party. She called me within 30 seconds. Marina, are you okay? She asked, clearly alarmed. I'm okay, I said. But they're officially off the guest list. That afternoon, I returned to the seaside venue, the one I'd imagined Evelyn walking into, eyes wide with delight. But this time, it was mine. I asked the staff to remove the gold-lettered sign that read, Happy 35th Anniversary Collins Family, and replace it with something simple. Private party, invited guests only. I got rid of the peonies and replaced them with lavender. My favorite. I called up a few friends, a coworker from the bakery, a neighbor from my yoga class, an old college friend I hadn't seen in months. Good food, white wine, jazz. Just come, I said. Zoe was the first to arrive, wearing a bright red dress and the proudest grin I'd ever seen. You made me proud, she said, raising her glass. Then more people came. No one from Liam's family, of course. Just people I truly wanted there. People who had seen me run deliveries in the rain, who had shared recipes with me, who had listened when I talked about Evelyn without judgment. People who didn't need convincing to believe I belonged. We ate, we laughed, we danced. And for once, I didn't have to pretend. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. Not because I was accepted, but because I no longer needed to be. Around 8 p.m., Zoe leaned in and whispered, Do you think they'll show up? I shrugged. Part of me hopes they do, just to see how great the party is without them. And as if the universe had a sense of drama, the door to the venue opened. There she was, Evelyn, dressed in her signature silver gray, lips pressed into a fine line. Harold stood behind her, looking confused. And flanking them, as always, were her two daughters, faces painted with polite disdain. This is, Evelyn began, glancing at the sign outside. Whose party is this? I stepped forward, calm and clear. Mine, I said. I booked the place. I figured it was about time I threw a party for myself. Evelyn blinked. You canceled our anniversary? No, I replied. I canceled the party I organized for people who made it very clear I'm not part of their family. The room was silent, except for the low hum of jazz music in the background. I turned my back to her and walked back to my table. Zoe handed me a fresh glass of wine. That, she said, was legendary. I clinked my glass against hers. Outside, Evelyn still stood there, not walking in, not walking away, trapped in the doorway of a celebration she never imagined she'd be excluded from. And me? I no longer needed a seat at her table, because now I'd built my own. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. Not exactly light, not heavy either. More like a quiet emptiness. Like I had just stepped over a threshold and left behind the version of myself who always walked on eggshells, afraid of upsetting someone. Liam was sitting out on the balcony, coffee in hand, sunlight catching the mess in his hair. I slid the kitchen door open and stepped out. So, I said, keeping my tone calm. I assume you heard about last night? He nodded without looking at me. Mom's furious. Said you humiliated her. I leaned against the railing. I didn't leave her off the guest list. She told me I wasn't family. I know, he said. So, are you on my side? He looked up at me then, eyes tired but resolute. I should have been, a long time ago. I didn't say anything. The ocean breeze carried in a soft mist, and in my chest, something settled. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting. I just knew. I couldn't go back to who I was. The girl who stayed quiet, who made cakes and arrangements and excuses for people who never once met her halfway. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Evelyn. I let it ring, watched it flash and fade. Then came the message. You embarrassed Harold. Don't expect to be welcomed back. I almost laughed. For the first time, her threats didn't land. They felt light, hollow, like a door slamming shut behind me that I'd already walked through and locked from the other side. That night, I cleared out my workspace. I took down the framed photos from Liam's family gatherings and replaced them with prints of my sourdough formulas and some lavender sketches I'd made months ago. I opened my old business email and typed a message to the owner of a small local bakery I admired. I'm looking for a creative collaboration. I specialize in French pastries and have a few signature recipes. Would love to connect if you're open. I'd never been this direct before, but I'd also never felt this free. That evening, Liam walked into the kitchen as I was finalizing a new logo idea for a bakery concept I'd been dreaming about. You have a name for it yet? He asked. I showed him the screen. Marina and Company. Simple, he said. I think it's time my name went on something I built. He reached for my hand. I'm sorry for not standing up for you sooner. I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. It's okay, but I'm not coming back. I know. Are you going with me? He didn't answer right away, but in his eyes, something softened, and something else broke open. 3 weeks later, we moved out of the Collins neighborhood and into a smaller coastal town where I opened my first little storefront. I named it the Salt and Butter, because sometimes the simplest things hold the richest flavor. Evelyn never called again. I stopped expecting her to. Those who once treated me like an outsider were now part of a closed chapter. And me? I was no longer asking for a seat at anyone's table, because now I had built my own, and for the first time in years, it tasted just right. I was kneading dough for the first batch of chestnut sourdough I planned to test at the shop when I heard the doorbell. The front door was just a few steps from the kitchen, but Liam had already stood up from his desk down the hall, so I let him get it. Something in the tone of the bell, steady, decisive, not hesitant like a friend's, not excited like a customer's, made me stop. I froze with my flour-covered hands still resting on the countertop. I didn't know what I was hoping for. A confrontation? A tirade? Or maybe some foolish part of me still whispered, what if she came to apologize? I moved quietly toward the edge of the kitchen, just behind the wall that separated it from the living room. I didn't step out. I just stood there, listening. You're not going to invite me in? She asked, her voice light but edged, like always. Marina's busy, Liam answered. I figured you were here to see me. They sat down. No offer of tea, no pleasantries. This wasn't one of those carefully arranged afternoons back at the old Collins house. No crystal vases, no Persian rugs, no hand-painted china. Just 2 chairs, a wooden table, and the quiet truth sitting between them. I didn't think you'd let her pull you away from your family, she said. Her tone made it clear that her definition of family was quite exclusive. I didn't walk away from family, Mom, Liam said calmly. I walked away from a system of favoritism that you built. Silence. I imagined her tightening her grip on her expensive purse. She probably hadn't expected him to speak to her like that. You're saying this to your own mother? I should have said it a long time ago, Liam replied, firm. Marina was never treated with kindness, Not because she did anything wrong, but because you never intended to let her in. Her laugh was short, sharp. She's a baker, Liam. While our family has worked in real estate for decades, you really think she understands value? That's the problem, Mom, Liam said. You never really understood me. And for a second, I forgot to breathe. I don't want my wife spending every family dinner struggling just to feel seen. I don't want our future kids growing up in a house where love is conditional, where affection depends on your resume or your pedigree. She stood. I could almost hear the shift in her posture. I raised you to move upward, Liam, not to live small, with someone who has no future. Then came the silence, and Liam, without pause, answered, She is my future. I pressed a hand to the wall beside me. My eyes burned, but not from sadness. From something else, something rising. Relief, maybe, or finally, being seen. For once, I wasn't the one fighting to explain myself. I wasn't the one standing alone. She didn't speak again. I heard the front door close. Not loudly, but firmly. Liam didn't call out after her. He didn't linger at the threshold. When he walked into the kitchen and saw me standing there, eyes a little red and sleeves still dusted with flour, he simply said, I'm sorry for letting you fight this alone for so long. I didn't answer. I just stepped toward him, wrapped my arms around his waist, and rested my forehead against his shoulder. The shoulder of a man who had finally chosen not to be a bystander, but to stand with me. And in that moment, I knew this was home, not because of the house, not because of the silence that had finally returned, but because the person standing with me had finally come all the way in and shut the door behind him. A month later, the Salt and Butter officially opened. No banners, no grand opening fuss, just a regular Monday morning, sunlight spilling across the hand-painted wooden sign out front, casting long shadows down the little brick path that led into the bakery. The first ring of the doorbell came at 7:12 a.m. An older woman with silver hair bought a focaccia and asked if I took wedding cake orders. A group of college students came after that, ordered lattes, and asked about the recipe for my caramel walnut bars. I told them about Brittany butter, about 12-hour fermented dough, and about the love I need into every batch. I spoke without hesitating, without shrinking. I didn't need anyone's permission anymore. I didn't need to be validated to belong. By noon, Liam stopped by with a packed lunch, like he'd started doing lately. He didn't say much, just sat at the corner table, reading through eco-home investment proposals. I looked at him, then around, at the pastry shelves, the simple wooden chairs, the lavender I'd planted by the window boxes. I used to think family was something granted, something you had to earn or be invited into. But now I understood. Family is where you are seen without explanation, where someone stays, not out of duty, but because they choose to. When I closed the shop that evening, I turned back to look one last time. The scent of bread still lingered in the air. Outside, the sea breeze rolled in soft and cool. The wooden sign above the door swayed gently. Salt and butter. Salt for the sting. Butter for the balm. Like life, not always sweet, but rich. Like me, not perfect, but finally enough.